Sitting here with Darren Carrington, played in the NFL for 8 years, 4 of which you played for the Chargers right here at this stadium.
Right here.
5th round draft pick, played in 2 different Super Bowls, one with the Broncos, one with the Chargers here. First of all, I guess, let's get started right away. What was the highlight of your football career for you?
I mean, of course, being drafted. Having been a walk-on, not getting a scholarship, being kind of a long shot, just being able to, like all your hard work is culminated into you getting drafted. So that was amazing. Going to the Super Bowl my first year, that definitely, was a highlight. So I'd probably say those 2 things were definitely highlights of my career.
So that first year, you go to the Super Bowl your first year.
Yes.
You're a kick returner, but you're there. What was that? I mean, I just feel like unexpected, such a high emotion, maybe even a little thought of, oh, this NFL thing is easy, we'll get to the Super Bowl every single year. What was that thought like, playing in the Super Bowl your rookie year?
It was unreal because, it's one of those things where you expect it, but you don't expect it. As you're having a good season and you getting closer and you get closer, and then you realize, man, we're actually going to the Super Bowl. Like, this is a game that the whole world watches. This is a game that I've grown up, watching. But once the game starts, you realize that, man, it's another game. Like, I've got to give everything I got, just like I've been doing. I prepared for this moment, I prepared for this opportunity, and now I have to make sure I seize this moment and do my absolute best to help my team win.
So if that maybe drafting or the Super Bowl are kind of your high points of your football career, was there a low point for you? What was kind of the lowest, most difficult part of your professional football career?
Losing that second Super Bowl. Kind of the way we lost, it was, even though when I was a rookie and we lost in Denver, we lost way worse. But losing, that second time, I guess it was probably because I was now a starter. It was, because I took losses very hard. I couldn't understand how guys could hang out and party after a loss. So I took that really hard. And after that, being made available to the expansion draft, that probably was a low point because I felt like, we had a great young team. We were hoping to potentially go to the Super Bowl again, kind of have, this mini dynasty, if you will, and they dismantled the team.
So what was that moment like for you? You go from being in the Super Bowl with the Chargers, you're a starter, you're an established veteran, to now you go to this brand new expansion team in Jacksonville. Just, I gotta think it was just a completely different situation. What was that like going to that team now in Jacksonville?
The expectations were very low. So I guess on one end that was kind of good, but it was different because of the way I got there. It wasn't one of those things where I volunteered to go. I was kind of made available, to go. So I was really basically released by the Chargers and made available to the expansion draft. But, you always have to keep things in perspective. And, my thing is, you have to, in a sense, you have to turn the page and you have to make the best out of whatever situation you have. And, that's what I did. I was thankful that I had an opportunity to continue to play in the NFL and, kind of moved on and figured out, okay, I have to figure out a way to dominate where I am.
What was retirement like for you? I know it's easy to, we're all trying to find our own identity in certain things and in different things. And I feel like as an athlete, it's got to be that much harder to, you find your identity in that because you've been an athlete all your life. You were probably the best in your high school. You were probably one of the best in Pee Wee growing up. Like, football probably was a big part of your identity. So what was that like when you lost that, when you retired and now you got to find something else to do?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the most difficult things that I've done in my life, simply because you see athletes and it's not that you've had this 8-year career and now it's over. It's you've played this game probably since the age of 8, 10, 12 years old, and somebody one day tells you that you can no longer do what you love to do, right? And it's not like I didn't make this decision, and most players, they don't make that decision. And because of that and how it ends, I think that makes it a lot more difficult. And like you said, the identity part is one thing that helped me, and it was still pretty difficult, but one thing that helped me is that I had learned where my true identity came from, where my identity didn't come from the NFL. The NFL and being a pro athlete, that's what I did, that's not who I was. And understanding who I was, my value in Christ, that really, really helped me get over the hump and move on to the next phase of my life.
So you said you found your identity in Christ and that helped you kind of get through. Your identity wasn't in football, but where does your faith journey start? When did you find Christ? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, So having my childhood dream being, wanting to play in the NFL, I mean, I had that dream since I was 8 years old, and, I achieved that dream, and in my mind, I felt once I achieved that dream, life would be complete. I won't have any other needs. And my rookie year, after we won the Super Bowl, we get our AFC Championship ring, and I remember, like it was yesterday, sitting in the locker room, looking around, and the question kept going through my mind, is this it? Like, is this all there is? And it was as if something was missing. And I wasn't like the typical story that, people say, well, the only reason people become Christians is because they lose everything. And it's like, I had a really good job, right? I was living my dream, and it wasn't that. I felt, man, there was something missing. And it was probably a 2-year journey of me trying to find what that was. And it wasn't until I came to San Diego and I met a guy named Gilbert, who he really took me under his wing, and it was just through a relationship with him I finally understood what it was that was missing in my life. And it was not a church goer, because I went to church. It was a pure relationship with Jesus Christ.
What would you say to people who think that when I get there, then I'll feel good, then I'll be happy, when I get success, when I have arrived, then I'll be happy? What would you say to that?
Achieving these things of the world, it's all temporal. Like, it only gonna last for a little while. Like, I played 8 years. I thought I was gonna play forever. And now here we are 23 years later, and if my identity was in that, I'd be a mess, right? But understanding that what really sold it for me is when I understood who I was in Christ, and I knew that it was never gonna change. No matter what I did, no matter how successful I was according to the world, or if I just had a quote unquote common job, I was God's masterpiece. And that, to me, that validated it for me.
One thing I love about sports is the life lessons that it teaches you. I mean, everything from being on time to practice to the discipline that it takes. What's one thing, or maybe a couple things, that sports has taught you about life, about your relationship with God, about your family, anything like that? What's one thing that sports has taught you?
Hard work pays off. Teaching me how to persevere through tough situations. Teamwork, understanding, teamwork is, you have making sure you work with a team, and knowing your role and being good at your role. And the most important is make sure that you find your identity in something that's never ever gonna change, no matter what happens. If you go to any locker room in the NFL, in the NBA, in the MLB, whatever, any sport, no one's name is drilled in over their locker. Everybody's name slides in and out. That's how quick your identity can change if your identity is locked into professional sports. But if your identity is in Christ, I guarantee you that our names, if you will, in God's locker, they're glued, crazy glued, they're drilled in, and they're never ever gonna change. And He's always gonna see you as His masterpiece, and there's nothing that you can do to change that. Does that mean that you can just be lazy and not do anything? No, when you understand He's made you a masterpiece because He loves you and He has this amazing plan for you, there's nothing that you can do. To me, that makes me want to work harder for that one who loves me, and I know that person is Jesus Christ.
So let's talk about what you do now. You're a retired football player. You are a marriage pastor at Rock Church in San Diego. So I would be stupid to not get a little free marriage advice then, since I'm talking with the marriage pastor. My wife and I have been married almost 7 years now, no kids yet. What's one piece of advice, the best advice that you could give for me, for my wife and I?
Being the competitive guy that I am, I don't really believe that, this is going to be an oxymoron, because there shouldn't be competition in marriage, but there's one competition I feel there should be in marriage, and it is to figure out how to outlove each other. Every day, if both of you are waking up saying, how could I love my spouse more today than I did yesterday, I think that is an awesome way to live life. And there's one rule, right? In any sport, there's rules. The rule is there's no scorekeeping, right? The foundation verse is submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And the reason why you're loving each other is not because of anything you can get from one another, but it's because this is what Christ has informed us to do. And if He said it, it's kind of like whether we know God said it, that settles it whether you believe it or not. That's how I believe. If God said it, that settles it. It don't matter if you believe it. It is what it is.
All right, man, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for doing this interview.